Hello Skip, how are you?
Hey, come stai?
Bene, tu? So Skip, I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about your experience with Weather Report.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it was. I was actually working quite a bit at that time when they called me, and I had a good friend in Roy McCurdy. He was the drummer with Cannonball Adderley. And he's actually the one that got me that gig. And a couple months before, we worked at the same club opposite one another for a while, and they would come through, and I would be in the house band, he would be with Cannonball Adderley. And Joe Zawinul, who was in that band, that's how he was able to set it up. And so he said, well, you know, we got to get you out of this city, you know, you should be out playing. And I was, oh, okay, great. He said, you want to play with Frank Zappa, or you want to play with the Weather Report? And I was like, I don't know. I think I would like to play with Weather Report. And then I forgot about it. And a couple months later, the phone rang, and I was in the shower. And my mother-in-law at the time took the message, and then I came out of the shower, and she said, like, the weatherman called.
The weather.
I was like, the weatherman? And then it dawned on me that it was from the question that Roy asked me about who I wanted to play with. So she said, well, and I was like, oh no, I missed the call. And she said they'll call back in 20 minutes. And the next day I was in LA.
Wow.
But I had to play that night because I couldn't get anybody to take my place. So I stayed up all night. I got the flight out and then ended up being in LA early afternoon with my drums and everything. And the roadies picked me up at the airport in a truck and then took me to this recording studio.
And you recorded already?
And I played 8 hours that day.
Wow.
And that ended up being the stuff that's on the tune Mysterious Traveler. And so it was me and another drummer was already there. I didn't know there would be another drummer there, but they had already been rehearsing the tunes. So he had the basic thing laid down. He had a big set, 24-inch bass drum, big toms and stuff. And I thought I was doing like the kind of stuff that Ira Krivda and Alphonso Johnson had done in the band. So I had brought my little drums. I had 18-inch bass, you know, like a jazz kind of kit,
yeah. High
pitched. So I played those notes in between what the other guy played, which were the big lower notes. And that's what you hear in the recording.
That's good.
And Wayne Shorter was just here yesterday, last night.
And
they were going to play that Mysterious Traveler, and then they had rehearsed it. So it was wild. So I did those 10 days. And Joe Zawinul was very demanding at some times and very friendly at other times. So I had a really good time, and I learned a lot from that experience. And then, like, when it was over, the next day I was back, and I think the next week I was with Jimmy Smith, the organist. So I was doing a lot of work, but it was really different than the Weather Report stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That was like December of 1973.
So Skip, you've been also a clinician and an educator in the last years, right?
Yeah.
And you wrote some interesting books. Do you want to talk about some of them?
Yeah, the first book that I did, I was very lucky because I went back to school for my master's in Stati Uniti. There's like high school and college, and then master's, and then doctorate. And so I went back to get to prove that I could read a book and be a student again. And my final project for the master's, it's called the master's thesis, was this book. And so I wrote a book, a drum book. And the guy that was the sign-off guy, you know, like you hand in your project and your teacher said, he wasn't a drummer or anything, it was a master's for education. So he said, geez, the only drummer I know is I don't know any drummers, I only know Louis Bellson. I said, fine, Louis Bellson will sign off on this book. Is that good? Because I knew Louis Bellson. He had been helpful to me a couple different times. And so that solved it. And then I turned in the project, and 3 weeks later, I happened to meet Sandy Feldstein, who was a a really nice guy and really helpful to me, like a mentor, and as he had been for many different people. But he was a publisher. He was also a player and president in the Percussive Arts Society, all that kind of stuff. And I happened to meet him, and I said, would you spend some time? And so he said, I have 15 minutes, and I showed him my book, and they took the book. That was it. He was the only guy I showed the book to. And that company, CPP Bellman, ended up being Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers got bought by Alfred, and so that book, World Fusion Drumming, started out as The Beat, the Body, and the Brain. But now, 20 years later, that book is still available. That was the first one. The books you can check out on the website, or on the, we'll have a little picture of this so you can check it out. And then I did another one later in the 90s about the broken eighth note feel, which is like a jazz feel that's based on eighth notes, kind of like Tony Williams, Roy Haynes, Jack DeJohnette, and Yoon Christensen, where I'm going to play a little bit now. So the more normal jazz stuff is built on triplets, where it's but this other feel that started like in the early 60s and was a holdover from like Boogaloo and the Shing-a-ling, stuff like that, like pop grooves from R&B records, was based on eighth notes, so that the feel started getting flatter. Yeah, at all tempos, not just like 150 and above or something, but so the whole style ended up being based on eighth notes, not triplets. And then so guys were interested in that here, so I did the book, and then for, what, I don't know, 15 years or so we did that class. And that's what that book was for, that class. And you can still get the book. But it's all based on all those guys that have played that style right up through now, with Billy Stewart and Eric Harland, all those guys that play the straight eighth note feel, as well as the swing stuff. That's what the jazz stuff is called by Eric Harland. And Jeff Watts, all that stuff that's pretty much all triplets. This other style is the balancing force to that. And then the last book was one we did for the Jazz Drum Styles class, and that was this Profiles in Jazz Drumming book. And it's like covers the 13 different drummers, at least in this first edition, of drummers from 1960 to 2005. And it's bioinformation, tips on their style, transcriptions that Fabio Preazzolo did on there, so that the tunes you can break them down and see, and you can hear them in real time or slowed down, so you can get an idea of what guys are doing. And that was the required text for the drum styles class. Yeah, so those 4 books, and now I'm working on this book, second edition. So kind of like a follow-up to that new Danny Gottlieb book, The Evolution of Jazz Drumming. This will cover from the 60s, like this did, but more guys. Less stuff, more guys.
Skip, do you have any advice for people who are just starting facing the music industry?
Yeah, as a player, I think what's happened here at school is there's music business, music therapy, and music production and engineering. And also, you also have to learn regardless of what instrument you play, you have to learn keyboard and harmony. And for drummers, it's real important to get that together. Therapy is kind of an alternative for like a gig for not just playing, but being able to help people with music in a different way. But any of those other facets, the music business and MP&E, the music production and engineering, because now you need to be able to do that, like we're doing our own videos now, and our own recording for the music we play. And you're putting it on your website and I saw the one where you have the stuff with your brother. Where
Yeah, everything is self-produced nowadays.
right, and so it's a piece of it. You just can't go and like play with your friends and then, I mean, maybe you can, but I think it's harder and harder now to do that sort of thing. But I think the big piece is knowing keyboards also, so that you know what's going on in the music like everybody else. Not that you have to play, but if nothing else, to help to improve your hearing so that you know where everything is.
So do we need training and harmony studies?
Right, well that was the idea behind the styles classes, that you had to be able to know where you were in the songs. So I would play songs for people and like stop and say, what measure are we in? Remember we did that when you were in the class. And
Yeah, that's true.
Is it a blues? You know. So the idea was that you knew just from, even in the bass solo, where the song was. You could hear what was going on in it. And that helps you to help everybody else play better. And if people are comfortable with your playing, they're comfortable with hiring you. Kind of like works together. So that would be the big piece, I think, would be learning keyboard and harmony, the music business and the music production and engineering. Any of the software stuff that you would be able to do.
Pro Tools and...
Or Logic, or whatever it is, the one that like school now uses a digital...
Performer.
Yeah, something like that. So that you can help to reproduce your own stuff, at least where you can demonstrate that you can do something with the music on another level.
Yeah.
The more prepared you are, the less you need to pay somebody else to do it.
Thanks, Skip, for accepting to participate.
Well, my
It's been a pleasure.
Piacere mio.
Thanks.